What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Adventure Outpost, your place for all things movies, where you get to listen to a rambling man ramble on about movies. It's what I do, and that's why you're here, all three of you, and I appreciate all three of you being here. In today's adventure, we're going to be talking about trilogies. It seems like everywhere you look these days, sequels and prequels and reboots and requels and all the like are just being thrown out all willy-nilly, and they seem to be the only movies that gain any traction today in Hollywood, and for good reason. They're moneymakers. So in today's adventure, I thought it would be a fun idea to go through and rank all of the trilogy movies that I have seen so far in my life and rank them up. What do I hate? What do I love? What's my least favorite? What is my most favorite? Now, there are some caveats to this list, of which I won't mention. We're just going to go through the list. Obviously, this is my inane list, so it's my collection of trilogy movies that have come out. Some movies have more than three, but I don't count them because to me the trilogy is the trilogy, and then they made other ones after that we're just going to ignore. You know what movie I'm talking about. So there's really no rhyme or reason to my picks, but you know, they're my list, it's my reasonings, it's whatever I want. We're in my world, the rest of you are just living in it. So that's what we're gonna do today. But enough of that, let's get on to the show. Coming in at last place is a collection of movies that some of you are going to agree with, some of you are absolutely not going to agree with it being this low, and most of you just don't care. And that is the Sequel Trilogy. And for any of you who don't know what the Sequel Trilogy is, I'm talking about this collection, this monstrosity. Yes, this is my least favorite trilogy of all time. Think about every trilogy you could think of right now. There's some really good ones you're thinking of, there's some really bad ones. And no matter which one you're thinking of, these three are worse. I think the biggest thing that puts this one at last for me is the missed potential. There is so much potential in this trilogy to have been great, to have been really good, but they made so many missteps along the way. They decided, let's make 3 different directors take on each individual story in this trilogy, and let's not have any one person like a Kevin Feige have an overarching plot to keep them all in line. No, we'll just let them do whatever the fuck they want. So you get this misjumbled, mismatched bunch of crap that is the Sequel Trilogy. There's a lot of really good ideas in this movie, but good ideas don't get us over the finish line. Force Awakens. I like all of the beginning of this movie. The opening scene where we get introduced to Kylo Ren is really fucking awesome. Even when we're introduced to Rey is not bad. It's a good start for the character. It's just where they took her, where she really started to suck and become Mary Sue. Everything in this movie is really great until they meet Han Solo, and then the movie falls off the rails. The Last Jedi. Everything with Rey and Kylo is really, really good, and even Luke Skywalker. I'm not one of those people that are like, you ruined Luke Skywalker for me. No, I don't really care what they did with Luke Skywalker. It was much more interesting that he was a hurt person as we went on, that he was still lost, than him just being the put together Jedi that we saw him at the end of Return of the Jedi, because that just wouldn't have been interesting. I really like the theme in this idea that you have to burn away your past and that she was nobody. That is a really cool concept to move forward with in the Star Wars universe. Everything else in this movie is dog shit. And then there's this movie. We're not going to talk about this movie. Just barely edging out the Sequel Trilogy is our next one. We are in the group of trilogies right now that have one okay movie and the rest are crap. This one is at the bottom of the list because even that one okay movie isn't even really that good now, that once you, like, it has a lot of diminished returns. It's one of those movies that does not hold up over time. And that is the Hangover Trilogy. I need to get this one on Blu-ray. This is the only good one, and even good is a relative term. Like, it's entertaining, and it was definitely very of its era, and when it came out, like, I remember loving it the first time I saw it in theaters, and then I bought it when it came out, and I watched it again. It was like, yeah, it's still pretty funny, and then the next time I watched it, I was like, that is less funny, and the more and more I've watched it as I've gotten older, the less and less I like it. Number 2 is terrible. It's literally just the first one done over again. The third one at least tries to mix it up, but by then it's too far, too late. It's just like, we just don't care anymore. The Hangover Trilogy. The next trilogy on our list has a very particular set of skills, and if you fuck with them, they will murder your ass. And that is the Taken trilogy. I only have 1 and 2. I still gotta get the third one, even though the third one is absolute garbage. This is another one where the first one is the only good one, and it's serviceable. It was a solid action thriller when it first came out. It did gangbusters, much better than they thought it would do. So of course, naturally, they had to squeeze every bit of dime and juice that they could get out of this, and that's how we got the really terrible Taken 2, which is just the first one again, and then the third one, which is pretty much like the other two, except now he's the one on the run. It's not a good trilogy, and you can see they were already burning on fumes by the time the second one rolled around. Our first animated trilogy hits the list, and that is the Madagascar Trilogy. You notice a lot of these I have like the sequels on Blu-ray, and then the first movie I don't. The theme continues here. This is the only actually like decent one, and it's just decent. It was a fine animated movie for kids. It's innocuous enough. This one is nonsense. This one is also nonsense. I don't even honestly remember these two. That's how forgettable they are. Like at least this one, I have fond memories of watching as I was a kid. Santa makes his one and only appearance on that list with The Santa Claus. Again, I only have the first two. I don't have the third movie. I get it at some point, maybe whenever I can upgrade all these to Blu-ray. This is the only actual good movie of the bunch. This is absolute nonsense. The third one is even more nonsense when you just watch freaking Martin Short chew some scenery and just go wild. It is a very silly trilogy. When Christmas comes around, do yourself a favor. Just watch the first one. Don't even bother with the other two. My fiance will hate to see this one so low, but sorry, baby, the movies suck, except the first one, and that is the Divergent series. The first one is actually a really solid young adult dystopian movie. The other two are the absolute creme de la creme of terribleness. It is so bad. She showed me these movies for the first time during COVID, and I actually really liked the first one, so I was like actually like interested to watch the other two. And then I was even more interested when she told me the other two were terrible, because I was like, oh man, now I need to see how badly these got. And I was completely unprepared for how bad they were. Like I had it in my head that it was going to be bad, and they were so much worse than that. So just like the Santa Claus, do yourself a favor, just watch the first one. There's no reason to do anything else. A trilogy that I watched religiously as a kid, and I would spend hours playing in the land of it at Disney World, and that is the Honey, We Shrunk Our Kids, Baby, Ourselves trilogy, however you want to call it. I watched these movies religiously as a kid. I never really cared for the second one, Honey, We Blew Up the Kid. That one always fell through the radar for me. Was never the biggest fan of it. I used to watch the third one, We Shrunk Ourselves, all the time. I watched it as an adult not too long ago, and it is terrible. This is another trilogy where really you only struck gold in the first one, and the rest of the movies are really running on fumes. This movie is really inventive, very fun, it's a really great premise. The practical effects work in this movie is phenomenal. This is a wonderful family movie if you're looking for something good to pile into. These ones are entertaining, like you won't feel like you've wasted your time, but they're not good. Ain't got no job, you ain't got nothing to do tomorrow, just spark up with your buddies and hang out and watch the Friday Trilogy. I don't have Friday After Next, the Christmas themed Friday movie, but I have Friday and Next Friday. The first Friday it's so great. It's such a funny comedy. It's one of those great, just like, not really a plot to it, just kind of like a hangout movie of just like some shit that goes down in the hood. Ice Cube and Chris Tucker are both hilarious in this movie. The second one, Next Friday, is pretty terrible, and so is Friday After Next. This is another one. We're just in the section of trilogies right now where it's like, just watch the original movie, and unless you're really a glutton for punishment or you need to watch as many movies as I do, avoid the other two. There's no reason. Just watch the goodness that Friday can provide. We're taking a stroll into the wardrobe next with the Chronicles of Narnia. I've only got the first two, Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I've never wanted to own because that movie sucked so hard. Obviously, if Disney had their way, this would be much more than a trilogy. Alas, all we have are these three movies to go by for the time being. The first one, and even Prince Caspian, these two movies are actually really good. I like the first one a lot. I saw the second one in theaters, have never watched it since. So I'm going to need a rewatch on that to really see if that one holds up. But these are some solid fantasy adventure movies. They would be higher up on the list if that third movie wasn't so fucking terrible that it drags these down. But these movies were really good for its time, and it's a shame that Disney didn't get to make a bunch more of these, because I easily could have taken more Narnia movies, at least if they could have risen back up from the vileness that was Dawn Treader. A film series that only most recently became a trilogy, most triumphantly, I might add, is the Bill and Ted movies. We got Bogus Journey, we've got Excellent Adventure, and we've got them Facing the Music. These are just really silly, entertaining movies. They're all nonsensical. They're very just silly about two stoners traveling through time, getting up to some wacky adventures. They're innocuous, they're harmless, they're just a fun way to waste an hour and a half. If you just need a good laugh, you can do much worse than the Bill and Ted franchise. It's this low on the list as far as trilogy wise go, just simply because it's a very loose definition of trilogy where it's just three adventures that happen to have the same two characters. But they're really like just silly and dumb, or like it just can't place higher than this simply because what we've got after this is just much better story wise, whereas this is just a good, fun way to kill an hour and a half and turn your brain off. But that doesn't mean they're bad. They're great. They're great movies. You can do much worse than watching any of these three movies. And it's got Keanu Reeves. What more do you need? Just go watch it. Up next is a trilogy of family, and that is Meet the Parents, Meet the Fockers, and Little Fockers. Little Fockers is so bad. You could tell they're just running on fumes by this point. Meet the Fockers isn't horrible. It's not great, but it's not the worst comedy it's ever made. It's fine. It's one of those movies where it's not a bad movie. It's not a great movie. It's just a movie you've seen. But that drags this trilogy down, as really you're left with the only movie that's actually really good, and that is Meet the Parents. This is a hilarious comedy. Ben Stiller is firing on all cylinders in this movie. Robert De Niro was one of the few really good comedies that he was doing around that time. That, Analyze This, he was pumping good comedies out in the 2000s. Adventure of Rocky and Bullwinkle, yeah, yeah. Meet the Parents. It's fine. Coming in hot on its heels is a trilogy that has spawned some of the most annoying animated characters of all time, and that is the Despicable Me franchise. We got Despicable Me 1, they're way all jumbled, Despicable Me 2, and Despicable Me 3. The first one is the only one that's really good. The second one is fine, it's very forgettable. And then the third one is only memorable because it has Trey Parker as the villain in it. But I can never forgive these movies for introducing us to the Minions, one of the most annoying characters ever to grace the screen, and now they're fucking all over the place at Universal. It's all over the place everywhere. I remember when these movies were coming out, when the first one came out at my theater, and some of my employees were like speaking in Minion language constantly, and I wanted to kill myself. These fucking Minions. The action comes Fast and Furious next, and no, it's not Fast and Furious, but Vin Diesel is a star in these movies, and that is Triple X. These movies are absolutely absurd, and I fucking love them. This one is very action oriented. It takes itself a little too seriously in this one. This one is absolute nonsense. This is when they finally knew exactly what type of movie they were making. This movie is balls to the walls, silly action. They knew exactly what they were doing. This is the movie that helps raise the Triple X trilogy to this spot in the ranking. I fucking love this movie unabashedly. I watch it all the time. It's hilariously silly. Donnie Yen is the fucking man. Right? It's Donnie Yen, right? I'm getting my Asian actors correct, right? Of course, we can't even see it in here. Yes, it is Donnie Yen. He's the fucking man. He's so good. He's just phenomenal in this. I could do without some Ruby Rose, but that's a small price to pay for such a good fucking action movie. Another action trilogy hits next. A trilogy that really has no business being a trilogy, but somehow became a trilogy, and I'm here for it because the man knows to give us what we want. And that is the Has Fallen trilogy. We've got Olympus Has Fallen, we've got London Has Fallen, and we've got Angel Has Fallen. I'm sure there's more on the way because Gerard Butler knows exactly what the people want, and he gives it to you when you need it. So I'm sure there's another one coming, because he always gives us some good action every few years. Olympus Has Fallen is the only one that's really actually a good movie. London Has Fallen is fine, a little tired because it follows Olympus Has Fallen too much. And then there's Angel. This one is very much like the Taken franchise, where it's like the first one's a really good movie. The second one kind of follows the first one almost beat for beat. And then to switch it up on their heads, they have the main character end up being the one on the run in the third one, which is exactly what happens in this movie. So very much like Taken, except this movie has much better production value and much better action that it puts it leagues ahead of that movie. And Gerard Butler's the B-movie king. He knows what I like, and he always gives me what I want. Olympus Has Fallen. It's great. Coming in hot on its heels is another franchise that has, another trilogy that has no business being a trilogy, and that is the Night at the Museum movies. We got Night at the Museum, Battle of the Smithsonian, and whatever the hell this one's called, Secret of the Tomb. I couldn't tell you the difference between numbers 2 and 3. I think 2 has Amelia Earhart, and third, God knows what the fuck the third one is about. This is the only one that's really good, and the reason it hits so high up in these rankings is because this movie is really good. This is like the perfect family movie. It is fun, it's enjoyable, it's funny, it's got some heart to it, some pathos. This movie is the perfect family adventure movie, and that helps it rank this high. I remember seeing this in theaters. I was stoned out of my mind, and the scene where it shows the little miniatures, Owen Wilson and Coogan, and they have to go let the air out of the car tire, and when it shows them like up close and like a close to shot, and they're trying to pour the air out and the air is coming so fast it's like flying them away, and then it cuts to a wide shot of the car and you just hear like little tiny air squeaking out. I cried laughing for like 30 minutes. I had to leave the theater. I was laughing so hard and like I couldn't calm down. Like this movie is so perfect. Robert Rodriguez's trilogy hits up next, and that is his Mexico trilogy. I don't know what he calls it. His Antonio Banderas trilogy. You got El Mariachi was the first one. Then you got Desperado, and then the classic Once Upon a Time in Mexico. All these movies are solid. They're like all solid movies. None of them are like great or like phenomenal. Like there isn't like one movie in the trilogy that's just like so perfect, but they're all just like 3 solid, entertaining movies. They're just a great action trilogy that really takes you on a journey with this El Mariachi, played by Antonio Banderas. Fun set of movies. I think this one is probably my favorite. Johnny Depp plays a really fucking awesome character in it. It's a lot of fun. All of these are a lot of fun, and this is a solid trilogy if you're looking for a good set of action movies to watch. Acapella your ass on over for this next pick, and it is the Pitch Perfect movies. I only have 1 and 2. This is another one where really the first one is the only good movie, but what puts it up so high is that this one fucking movie is that goddamn good. I love the first Pitch Perfect movie. I think it is a perfectly written comedy movie. It is very silly. It's very funny. One of my favorite forms of comedy is like background humor, where it's the kind of humor where you always have to be watching the screen because it's not a joke that you're going to see up front or have any dialogue to it, but you just notice it in the background of scenes taking place. And this has so many of those jokes in it. Especially when they first show up at college and there's all the like groups that you can join. Like the background has so many funny gags going on with it. It's just picture perfect. Oh, look at that. That's a pun. The second movie is terrible. The third movie is also terrible. But this movie is just so good. It hits this high up simply because of how perfect that first movie is. A wise man once said, "Forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza." It's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles trilogy. This is a close to home trilogy for me. I grew up on this. I watched these movies so much as a kid. The first movie is the only one that's actually really good in my eye. I freaking love it. I think it's a really good encapsulation of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The second one is a little too kid friendly for me, but it still has a lot of funny parts. The whole ending with Vanilla Ice cracks me up all the time. The third one is absolutely absurd. It's not great, but I still have a fond place in my heart for it simply because I grew up watching these movies. They're great. They're so much fun. I can always watch these whenever they're on. They crack me up so much, and I love the practical effects work on it. I think the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in these movies look better than any of the CGI monstrosities we've seen in later movies. Unlocked from the files of the police squad is the Naked Gun trilogy. We got the Naked Gun, we got the Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear, and the Naked Gun 33 1/3, The Final Insult. These movies are so fucking silly and hilarious. Again, the first one is the only movie that is objectively good. I cry every time I watch this movie. It is so goddamn fucking funny. It hits all my favorite humor, visual humor, gags, puns. It just hits so much. The Zucker brothers were absolute fucking kings back in the day. They made the best fucking comedies. I love these movies. When it shows the baseball highlights and like the guy gets hit by the car or gets mauled by a tiger, I fucking cry. I couldn't tell you anything about what happens in these other two because I barely watch them because they're just not up to par that this one is. This is the gold standard. If you're looking for great comedy, this is the way to go. And we're almost out of the road. And we're almost out of the woods. We're finally leaving the section of trilogies with only one good movie. We're getting to the spot where we're going to have two good movies. But we must first get through this final trilogy that has only one actually good version of it and two, and that is the Matrix Trilogy. I know this movie has become a quadrilogy now that has four movies, but I mean, we're just going to pretend like that one doesn't exist for right now. So we have the Matrix Trilogy. The first one is objectively a great movie. One of the better sci-fi movies to come out in the 20th century. It is a fucking trip. It holds up to this day. It is incredible. What doesn't hold up is the other two. The other two kind of fall in the line of the sequel trilogy of Star Wars. It has a lot of neat ideas in it and a lot of really good scenes and a lot of interesting moments, but they don't gel together to create a cohesive movie, at least in my eyes. They're very wonky, except in Reloaded has one of the funniest scenes in the world to me, although I don't think they were trying to have it be funny. The orgy rave scene in the beginning of the movie is absolutely hilarious to me, even still to this day. Every time I watch it, I just feel so uncomfortable because I'm just like, this is very sexual for no reason. It's just come right out of left field. Very bizarre. It gets me every time. It's fucking hilarious. But we finally push through the foliage of only one good movie in a trilogy to get to the section that has at least two good movies in the trilogy. And I know a lot of people are going to be very surprised to see this one up this high in my list, but fuck you, it's my list. I can do whatever the hell I want. What I like is what I like. And that is the Cars trilogy. The only one that's objectively terrible is Cars 2. That movie is absolutely a travesty. It is just such a miss. I don't like it at all. But Cars 1 and Cars 3 are really good movies, especially Cars. I think Cars 3 is my favorite of the trilogy. I think it's really good. The animation, it's fucking incredible. And it just hits on all cylinders for me. The first one is really good too. The animation as well is really good in it, and the whole stuff going on in Route 66 and the town where he is a really entertaining movie. This gets, I feel like, some unwanted hate on it. Like, it's definitely not the best of Pixar's stuff that they've done, but it's not as bad as they make it out to be. Like 2, yes, 2 is bad. But 1 and 3 are good movies, like definitely up to Pixar par and what they make. They're just good, enjoyable flicks. So Cars hits this high up. I'm sorry, it does. It beats The Matrix. It's just where it shoots for me. There are worse things out tonight than vampires, and it's Blade. We've got Blade 2, and Blade Trinity. This movie is terrible. I'm sure it has a soft spot for some people where it's just like an entertaining movie, and it is. It's entertaining enough, but it's not good. I remember seeing this in theaters and even being like, not great. 2 is my favorite, but of course it is. It's Guillermo del Toro. Like, is there any surprise? It's a great movie. And even 1 is also really good and really paved the way for a lot of superhero movies we get today. So thanks a lot, assholes. This is all your fault. I kid. But do I? No. This is a fine trilogy. I'm not the biggest Blade fan. I think I'm about to become a much more of a Blade fan now that Mahershala Ali is in the role, and I fucking love that man. So I'm expecting really good things from Blade. But this was a fine trilogy for its day. The heat is on in this next pick, and it is the Beverly Hills Cop trilogy. We got the first one in 4K, second one's coming out on 4K soon, and I hope the third one is following so I can have like a nice looking set all together. These are fine movies. The first 2 are really good. The third one is really silly, although it has a special place in my heart because it takes place at an amusement park and it's just absolute nonsense. So it's pretty enjoyable to me. But these two are like actually good movies. Eddie Murphy just fucking crushes it in these movies. Judge Reinhold also, and whoever the other cop is, I don't remember what his name is. But these are really entertaining action comedies, and it really made Eddie Murphy a star. Like he just oozes charisma in every shot in these movies. He's so freaking good. It hurts to put this next trilogy this low simply because the first movie is one of my favorite movies of all time. But unfortunately, its two sequels leave a lot to be desired. And that is the Mummy trilogy, the ultimate trilogy. Brendan Fraser's Rick O'Connell, Rachel Weisz is Evie. I fucking love the first Mummy movie. I think it is an absolutely perfectly made action adventure movie. That is how you do Indiana Jones for the modern audiences, even though that movie is even like 20 years old now, the first Mummy. But it just hit everything, did everything right. It was so freaking good. And the other two movies, not up to par. They're not terrible. The Mummy Returns has its moments, even though its CGI looks fucking awful. It's unreal that its CGI looks worse than the first movie, even though it's like 2 or 3 years later. And then Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, it just not great. I mean, it was nice that they switched up the formula and it wasn't just Emotep again, but not having Rachel Weisz back severely hurt it. The reason this trilogy does hit as high as it does past all these other ones is simply because the first Mummy movie is quintessentially perfect in my eyes, but I just couldn't put it up any higher past these other movies simply because of the other two movies dragging it down. But it's all right, Brendan. We still love you. Tom Hanks gets in on the fun in this next pick, and that is the Robert Langdon trilogy. That is the collection of books where he is the treasure seeker. I don't even know what the Egyptologist. What the fuck even is he? Symbologist. He's a symbologist. Yeah, okay. We've got the Da Vinci Code, we've got Angels and Demons, and we've got Inferno. The Da Vinci Code is really good fucking movie. I like this movie a lot. I remember seeing it in theaters and just really loving it. I'm gonna love everything with Tom Hanks in it. Even though I do have a soft spot for this movie, I enjoy it. It's got Tommy Boy and Ewan McGregor. This movie's not really that great. And then Inferno is a solid movie. It's not great, but it's a step up in quality from Angels and Demons. This is a very loose trilogy. It's really just like kind of in the vein of Indiana Jones, where it's just like Robert Langdon's on a new adventure in each one with no real cross thread throughout it. But they're fine. They're entertaining, enjoyable movies. If you're looking for a fun adventure mystery thriller, like you could do worse than the Robert Langdon trilogy. Jizz cocktail of explosions falls onto the screen next with the 80s testosterone fueled adventures of the Expendables. We have just a bunch of aging 80s action stars getting together to get one last pump off on each other to really enjoy those action hero statuses. Everybody in these movies, probably with the exception of a few of them, are way too old to be doing any of this. The reason they hit as high is because they are, even though way too old to be doing this, super entertaining and enjoyable to watch. They're very tongue-in-cheek, very silly, very throwback to the 80s action movies that inspired them. And the cast of characters that Stallone amasses in each one of them it makes it worth the price of admission, where you get to see a lot of interesting people. The first one is probably the best one, simply because it was unique at the time to see so many of these people in together like this. And then with each one, had a lot of dimension. The second one is easily my least favorite because it throws way too many moments where they try to have people said, like, I think John McClane, I think Bruce Willis and Arnold Schwarzenegger trade each other's one-liners, and it was just fucking groan-inducing. And then the third one has its moments because it's got Kelsey Grammer and Harrison Ford, so of course it's gonna be fucking good. But other than that, these movies are just testosterone-fueled masturbatory sessions of action-fueled nonsense. And I'm sure to some of you that sounds incredible. And honestly, the way I described it, it does sound pretty great. I feel like I need to go watch them now and pump one out. So I'll be right back. Ducks fly together in this next adventure series. And that is The Mighty Ducks, a classic childhood gem of mine about a bunch of young ice hockey playing clowns and their coach, that leads them to victory, Emilio Estevez. We got the Mighty Ducks, we got D2, the Mighty Ducks, and then of course D3, the Mighty Ducks. Man, they really got intricate with those subtitled ones there on that. All of these movies are pretty, this one is not great, it's pretty silly. But I really like both of these movies. This one is easily the best one of the bunch. Very heartwarming, very fun little family movie. This one is very entertaining too, where they end up somehow like going into the Team USA and like the Junior Goodwill Games. It's like very like silly and over the top, where it's like, are they in the Olympics? This is very silly. But these are fun movies. You can do wrong. You can do wrong. You can do much worse than watching these bad boys. I always have a soft spot in my heart for this trilogy, and you should too. Our first MCU trilogy to make the list, and my least favorite MCU trilogy at that. It should speak well for you MCU purists that these movies are going to be much higher on the list than all the other crap that came before it. But I'll give you your due. MCU makes some good movies when they try to. And worst of the bunch is the Iron Man trilogy. Now, they're not terrible. I actually like all of these movies. They're just simply this low because they're just not as good as the trilogies that will come later in this list. We're actually starting to get the trilogies where every one in the bunch is pretty good, and it's all just an objectively what my tastes are. And this is kind of the start of that. I mean, the second one is not great. It has its moments. There's some good stuff in it, but objectively, it doesn't really hit the mark. The third one is easily my favorite. Shane Black really puts his all into this one, and it has a lot of great twists. I love the Mandarin twist simply because it made fanboys everywhere wet their pants and cry in agony. Fucking love that shit. And the first one is also really good, the one that started it all. It's very wild to go back and watch this movie, knowing how far and how crazy it is now, and just seeing how like run-of-the-mill this movie is. But it still holds up, even with everything that's come later in the MCU. Up next is a trilogy that I don't think anyone ever expected to be a trilogy. I don't even know what he calls the trilogy, but we'll just call it M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong's trilogy. And that is the collection of Unbreakable, Split, and Glass. I don't have Glass. I don't know. I didn't realize I didn't have it until putting these together for that. So I will have to get Glass at some point, because actually the movie until the end is not terrible. Unbreakable, it's really solid. This fucking Steelbook is also really solid. Split, I think, is the clear best movie out of all of these. Everybody in this movie is really freaking good. James McAvoy especially, it just fucking fires on all cylinders in this. And I had to look because I was like, I think it's Anya Taylor-Joy, but I can't remember. And it is. It's very wild that was the first thing I saw Anya Taylor-Joy in, and how far she's come since then. But James McAvoy, the absolute fucking king in this movie. That man is a powerhouse actor, and does not get enough respect. Respect James McAvoy. Their MCU trilogy hits us next, and it is everyone's favorite demigod, Thor. We got Thor the Dark World, we got Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok is the clear best of all these movies. Taika Waititi knows everything that's good about being funny. This movie is fucking phenomenal. The Dark World, not good, not great at all. And Thor has its moments. There's some pretty good stuff in here. Everything when he's a fish out of water on Earth is hilarious to me. That whole section where he goes to the pet store to try and get a stallion to ride cracks me up every time. It's hilarious. I could watch that like 20 minutes of that movie like over and over again. Other than that, it's just all right. But what hits this high for us is simply because Thor Ragnarok is that good of a movie. Taika Waititi can do no wrong. Making these suits look good is the Men in Black trilogy. We got Men in Black, we got Men in Black 2, and we got Men in Black 3. I know International came out not too long ago, but that to me does not count as part of this trilogy because it's all new characters, it's an all new story. They really only brought back Emma Thompson for 3, so it's like, we're just gonna ignore it. But these movies hit this hard simply because the first one is that good of a fucking movie. This movie is quintessential. It is one of the most perfect science fiction movies ever made. It is an absolute great pairing in Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith. Will Smith carries this movie. He is in fucking pitch perfect form in this. He is so good and such a star. I freaking love this movie. I can watch it all the time. This movie, not great. This movie, however, is way better than it had any right being. This movie is actually super entertaining and surprised me a lot. I was not expecting much from this movie after two, but Josh Brolin did a really good job as Tommy Lee Jones's younger counterpart, and his movie is surprisingly emotional at the end at times. I did not expect that to happen, so that was a nice, fun surprise for me. So, Men in Black Trilogy hits this high for it. Watch 1 and 3, absolutely. Put yourself through 2. It's not the worst thing in the world. You can survive it. Um, you'll be fine. What gives you the right to enter the mountain? I have the only right. The Hobbit trilogy hits next. We got this great steelbook container for the Hobbit movies. I know a lot of people don't like these, and I get where you're coming from. For me, I just love the world of the Lord of the Rings, so I can put aside some of the more childish and silly things in this movie, and even look past some of the terrible CGI in it. Not that the CGI is terrible; it's just that it's so CGI that like it kind of takes you out of it because it just feels like you're watching a video game at times. But I enjoy these movies. I'm not gonna lie. The Unexpected Journey I like a lot. I'm not the biggest fan of the ending when they're hanging out with all the trolls and everything. I don't really like that too much. The Desolation of Smog is probably my favorite. The ending of that is really freaking good, and I do love. I have a soft spot for the barrel scene when they're escaping from all the elves. That scene, I just enjoy it. And then the Battle of the Five Armies is solid too. It's probably the like I don't know, the least put together cohesive wise of the movies, but the battle scenes and everything in it are pretty solid, and the whole ending with all the crazy shit going on is pretty solid, even if the CGI is a little too video gamey at times. So I just like living in this world, so I could easily watch any of these three movies at any point.